Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. Will there ever be accountability over the Russia collusion hoax? That is a question that is burning in many Americans' heads as they watch the attempt to hold former Obama administrations accountable for their complicity in election interference in the 2016 election. The Russia collusion hoax, of course, was attacking Donald Trump and accusing him of treason for allegedly being in cahoots with the Russians to sabotage Hillary Clinton. But it was actually the Clinton campaign all along, and the Obama administration knew it. They cooked the books, including over in ICA analysis that tried to warp the intelligence to fit a narrative that Trump was compromised by Putin. And so the attempts by the second term of the Trump presidency has been obstructed at every turn, and a prosecutor that was allegedly slow-walking the case has been fired in the state of Florida. You might have been closely watching this case because it is one of the few venues in America where you might see some accountability for deep state actors like Brennan. But there is now an alarming report about the involvement of GOP Majority Leader John Thune in trying to obstruct deep state accountability. We thought he was compromised before. This should seal the deal in your mind. Before we get into the story, please like, share, and comment at Explain America. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. As alluded to before, the Justice Department on Friday removed a career federal prosecutor who was slow-walking charges against John Brennan. And the former CIA director is now the target of the grand jury Russiagate probe in South Florida. Last July, it was reported that former FBI Director James Comey and John Brennan were under FBI investigation over their involvement in Russiagate. And the CIA Director John Ratcliffe referred Brennan and Comey for prosecution over the last summer. And U.S. Attorney Jason Reading Quinones in the Southern District of Florida is in charge of the investigation now. And on Friday, CNN reported that the DOJ abruptly removed the lead career Miami prosecutor who was stonewalling and slow-walking charges against Brennan. But there is another development. Earlier this year, the U.S. Justice Department asked 2 Senate committees to provide transcripts and records of contacts with former CIA Director John Brennan regarding the now discredited Russia collusion allegations, signaling there was an active investigation into whether the former spy boss had misled or obstructed Congress. And the letters were given a hard deadline of February 23rd for compliance. 2 months later, the body run by Senate Majority Leader John Thune has not complied, slowing a key angle of a grand jury investigation based in Fort Pierce, Florida, into whether Obama and Biden-era government officials engaged in a conspiracy to weaponize law enforcement and intelligence tools to harm President Donald Trump and his followers. Now, all that is needed, according to Just the News, who contacted the source who points out that Thune has been obstructing the documents needed to further the investigation against Brennan, is a floor resolution that is introduced in a vote in the GOP-controlled Senate, and neither has happened. Even after the prosecutors narrowed their request to evidence related to Brennan, the prosecutors were recently allowed to read one Senate Intelligence Committee report in a secure room, officials said. Thune's team has told DOJ that the Senate leader is trying to get unanimous consent to transmit the evidence, negotiating with Democrats to avoid a floor vote that could slow down other legislation. The week-long standoff means a Republican administration is being kept from seeing evidence from a Congress in its own party's control that referred Brennan in the first place for prosecution on allegations he misled lawmakers. So one option is for the DOJ to escalate pressure by serving the Senate with a grand jury subpoena. So this comes amidst reports that the Trump administration is poised to unleash a bevy of documents that will help this grand jury investigation in Florida, and it will highlight the alleged grand conspiracy among former Obama officials and other DNC operatives to sabotage the Trump campaign and his presidential administration. So, weigh in with your thoughts about this story. Do you think there was a grand conspiracy to sabotage Trump's presidency and his campaign? We always appreciate hearing from you at Explain America.
Documents that you're referencing that I released, declassified and released, spells out in great detail exactly what happens when you have some of the most powerful people in our country directly leading at the helm, President Obama and his senior-most national security cabinet, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and Susan Rice, and others, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people, and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November. Now, you referenced this President's Daily Brief document that was drafted for President Obama in early December that reaffirmed what the intelligence community professionals, as you say, had been assessing for the previous 6 months leading up to the election, which was that Russia neither had the intent nor capability to essentially hack the outcome of the U.S. election. As you said, President Obama's political appointees pulled that document before it could be published, and it has not been published until we released it today. And the very next day after they pulled that document, President Obama called a National Security Council cabinet meeting to discuss how Russia interfered with the election. Again, this is the first week of December.
9th,
President
right?
Trump had already won. Correct.
This is the December 9th meeting.
That's exactly right. The December 9th meeting, we declassified and released what they call the summary of conclusions from that meeting. Then DNI James Clapper took the lead on what President Obama wanted done, and which was essentially create a document that tells us not if, but how Russia interfered with the election. President Obama delivered the conclusion that he wanted the intelligence community to reach, and directed them to find and essentially create and manufacture the intelligence to support the conclusion that President Obama wanted to deliver to the American people. Once that document was drafted, the deep state kicked into gear and did what they usually do. They started leaking this classified information out to their friends at the Washington Post and others who are working hand in glove with the deep state to lay the groundwork for the assessment that they eventually released that served as the basis, once again, for this years-long coup with the goal of trying to subvert the American people's will and usurp President Trump from being able to deliver on the mandate that the American people gave to him when they chose to elect him as President of the United States.